I was stunned when my unfaithful wife abandoned me and our daughter, running off with her lover and leaving nothing but a note behind. The first thing I noticed when I came home that evening was silence, an oppressive, unnatural silence. There was no music playing in the kitchen, no sound of my wife Elena laughing with our daughter Sophie. Instead, there was a note propped up against a vase on the dining table. The sight of it made my stomach twist before I even read the first word. Adrian, I can't do this anymore. Raise your offspring yourself. Don't look for me. I found my happiness elsewhere. Good luck. Elena. It felt like someone had punched me in the gut. Sophie, our 6-year-old daughter, was in her room, blissfully unaware of the upheaval. The word offspring stuck out like a thorn. Not daughter, not child, just offspring. It felt clinical, detached, and cruel, as though I was being left with nothing more than a chore, not a family. I reread the note several times, my emotions swinging between disbelief, anger, and overwhelming sadness. For the next hour, I oscillated between rage and despair, my hands shaking as I packed Elena's things into boxes. It wasn't just grief over her departure. It was the nagging thought that I had missed something, that there had been clues all along. My only goal was to erase her presence from our lives as quickly as possible. That's when I found it, a packet of white powder stuffed in the back of her nightstand. Beside it was a compact disc in a cracked jewel case, labeled with a single mocking heart drawn in marker. The powder and the disc felt like ghosts of a life I didn't know my wife had. Curiosity overrode my anger. I set the disc aside, planning to look at it once Sophie was asleep. A part of me feared what it would reveal, but I couldn't let it go. Hours later, after tucking Sophie into bed, I sat at my desk, staring at the disc. My heart pounded as I slid it into my laptop. The file name was innocuous, special_memories.mp4. The video began with laughter and a shaky shot of our living room. The camera stabilized, revealing Elena sitting on our couch, not alone. 3 men surrounded her, each taking turns kissing and touching her. They laughed, shared drinks, and whispered things I couldn't hear clearly, but didn't need to. It was an explicit, nauseating betrayal, and the ease with which she carried herself, smiling, joking, felt like a knife twisting deeper with every second. I couldn't watch it all. My stomach churned, and I barely made it to the bathroom before vomiting. I gripped the sink, staring at my reflection. My wife, the mother of my child, had done this in our home, no less. The worst part wasn't just the betrayal, it was the location. Our house. Our couch. The place where Sophie and I had spent countless evenings as a family. The sanctity of my home had been shattered. I thought the video was the final blow, but it wasn't. It was only the beginning. The packet of white powder sat on my desk like a silent taunt. I knew enough to recognize it as drugs, but I didn't know what kind. My curiosity turned into grim determination. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about uncovering the truth. The next day, I took it to a former client of mine, Klaus, who worked as a chemist in Vienna's forensics lab. Klaus confirmed my suspicions. It was cocaine. High quality. Where did you get this, Adrian? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Let's just say it came from a place I wish I'd never looked, I replied, my voice heavy. Klaus didn't press further, but gave me a look that spoke volumes. This isn't small time. Whoever is involved with this has deep connections. Be careful. His warning stuck with me. It was clear that Elena hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She was tangled up in something far more dangerous. The more I thought about it, the more questions I had. Was this why she had left so abruptly? Was this why she didn't want to take Sophie with her? Using an app I'd installed on Elena's phone months ago to help her find it when misplaced, I tracked her to a luxury hotel on the outskirts of the city. When I arrived, I parked discreetly and watched from a distance. Elena emerged, arm in arm with a man who looked like he belonged on a runway. Sleek suit, perfect hair, and an aura of arrogance. A quick search of the license plate on his car led me to a name, Lucas Stein. Lucas was a mid-level manager in a hotel chain notorious for shady dealings. As I researched further, I discovered whispers of money laundering and drug distribution tied to Lucas and his associates. Elena had plunged headfirst into a dangerous world. I reached out to a contact in law enforcement, Inspector Greta Heiderman. Greta was an old friend from university and one of the sharpest detectives I knew. She listened intently as I explained everything, the video, the drugs, and Lucas. Her expression turned grim. Adrian, this isn't just a domestic issue anymore. This is criminal, she said. But if you want to pursue this, you'll need to be smart. Lucas is dangerous, and so are the people he works for. We devised a plan. Greta would investigate Lucas through official channels while I gathered evidence of Elena's involvement. It was risky, but it felt necessary, not just for me but for Sophie. 2 weeks later, I attended a gala hosted by Lucas's hotel chain. Greta had arranged for me to receive an invitation under the guise of a business investor. The event was opulent, filled with Vienna's elite. I spotted Elena almost immediately, draped in an emerald gown, laughing at Lucas's side. My heart pounded as I maneuvered through the crowd, positioning myself close enough to overhear their conversation. They spoke in hushed tones about shipments and routes. I used my phone to record everything, my hands trembling as I captured evidence tying them to illegal activities. Later that night, Lucas's arrogance got the better of him. In a drunken boast, he revealed to a group of guests that he had friends in high places who ensured the goods always moved smoothly. His words were the final piece of the puzzle Greta needed. The next morning, Greta and her team launched a raid on Lucas's properties. Simultaneously, Elena's workplace received an anonymous tip about her extracurricular activities. Within hours, her perfect facade began to crumble. Elena tried calling me, but I let her calls go to voicemail. The desperation in her voice was palpable. She had underestimated me, just as she had underestimated the consequences of her actions. That evening, as Sophie played in the living room, I watched the news report detailing Lucas's arrest. The anchors mentioned a female accomplice who was also under investigation. Elena's face didn't appear on the screen, but I knew it was only a matter of time. In the weeks that followed, life began to stabilize. Elena's betrayal had left scars, but it also brought clarity. I focused on creating a stable, loving environment for Sophie. Greta's support was invaluable, and I began to see her as more than just an ally. Slowly, we developed a bond that reminded me what trust and companionship could feel like. One quiet evening, as Sophie and I watched her favorite movie, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. Betrayal had broken me, but it had also forced me to rebuild. And in that rebuilding, I found strength. As I tucked Sophie into bed that night, she looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes and said, "I love you, Daddy." It was all I needed to hear. The weeks turned into months, and life gradually took on a semblance of normalcy. Sophie adjusted surprisingly well, her laughter returning as I poured every ounce of energy into making her feel secure and loved. Our days were filled with simple routines, school drop-offs, bedtime stories, weekend trips to the park. Yet, beneath the surface of our new life, the remnants of what had happened lingered like an unspoken shadow. Elena's downfall became public knowledge in the city. Her name, once associated with professionalism and charm, was now synonymous with scandal and betrayal. The investigation revealed more than I had anticipated. She wasn't just a passive participant in Lucas's schemes. She had played an active role in laundering money and facilitating the drug distribution network. Greta's team had pieced together enough evidence to ensure Elena would face severe consequences, though I made a conscious effort to shield Sophie from the details. One evening, as I scrolled through the news on my phone, I came across an article confirming that Elena had been officially charged and was awaiting trial. The headline brought a strange mix of emotions: relief that justice was being served, but also a deep sadness. Despite everything, Elena had been a significant part of my life, and it was hard to reconcile the woman I'd loved with the one now entrenched in criminal activity. Sophie was too young to understand, and I wasn't sure when, or if, I'd ever explain the full story to her. For now, she simply knew that her mother was away. Greta remained a constant presence during this time. She visited often, sometimes under the pretense of checking in on the investigation, but more frequently just to spend time with us. Sophie took to her quickly, and seeing them laugh and bond brought a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. Greta had a way of making even the darkest days feel manageable, her wit and resilience shining through. One night, after Sophie had gone to bed, Greta stayed for dinner. The conversation shifted from the investigation to lighter topics, and for the first time in months, I felt myself relax completely. As we sat in the living room, sipping wine, she leaned back and studied me with a soft smile. "You're doing an incredible job with Sophie," she said. "She's lucky to have you." I hesitated, unsure how to respond. "I'm just trying to make sure she feels loved, that she knows she's not alone." Greta nodded. "You're succeeding. And for what it's worth, you're not alone either." Her words lingered, sparking something I hadn't expected, a quiet hope. Over time, our connection deepened. Greta became more than just a friend. She became a partner in every sense of the word. She helped me rebuild my life, not by fixing it for me, but by reminding me of my own strength. Meanwhile, Sophie thrived in the stability we worked hard to provide. Her schoolwork improved, and her once quiet demeanor was replaced with the bubbly, curious spirit I remembered from before. She loved baking cookies with Greta, giggling as flour inevitably ended up everywhere but the mixing bowl. Those moments felt like a balm, healing wounds I hadn't realized were still raw. As for Elena, the trial loomed closer, and the evidence against her was overwhelming. I chose not to attend the proceedings, knowing it wouldn't bring me any closure. My focus was on the future, on Sophie, on Greta, on the life we were building together. One day, as I watched Sophie playing in the backyard, Greta by my side, I realized how far we had come. The betrayal and heartbreak that once consumed me had been replaced by a quiet resilience. I no longer saw myself as a victim of Elena's choices. Instead, I was a father, a protector, and, perhaps most importantly, a man who had rediscovered the meaning of love and trust. In the end, the chaos Elena had brought into our lives didn't define us. It was the strength we found in its aftermath that shaped our future. And for the first time in a long time, that future felt bright.